All right. G'day, Novocastrians. Welcome to your Jetstream podcast. We're finally back. The restrictions have finished. The football is back. We got 27 games in 28 days, and I thought it's time to get the boys back together to chat over some A-League. And we're doing it a little bit differently. We're going to trial doing these via Zoom, putting up both the audio podcast and the video file as well on the Jetstream socials. So we'll see how it goes and give us some feedback at Jetstream Niue on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and let us know what you think, whether you prefer just the audio and we save video stuff for other things, or whether you're happy for us to, or whether you want us to do the podcast recordings via Zoom and put up the video as well. But welcome back to everybody to a restart of the A-League season. It's a big welcome back to Andy. Andy, how you going, mate?
Good, Ferns. Great to be back here again, and sorry to everyone that has to see my face from now on.
And big welcome to Matt. How you going, mate?
Good, guys. Andy, you pretty much stole my thunder there. I was thinking, Ferns, you've pretty much just invited all of the Jetstream listeners to basically comment on our faces.
Well, you know, I've actually been really surprised I haven't got more negative feedback. No one's really said anything about how I've looked on any of these videos that I've been doing, but yeah, I do. You've got to pretty yourself up a little bit for video. You know, we'd be in pajamas or onesies doing recordings on Zencastr, just doing the audio that we used to be. So yeah, we have to pretty ourselves up a little bit for video.
I can see that you've been twirling the ends of your mustache.
Well, yes, it's taken a long time to get to this point, and it's probably going to be another year or two before it gets to full, the full handlebars type style mustache. But yeah, it's been it's not just an ISO beard; it's been going on for a while.
See, I was going to shave, but I thought, I can't go on there clean shaven with that. Not that I could grow anything like that. It'd take me about 10 years. But then Matt's obviously decided that he'll go for the clean look. So here I am in between.
He's before, middle, and after. And the other thing about doing video is every time I take a sneaky drink, everybody's going to see it. So yes, I'll put that to the side because I'm actually hosting. Boys, we'll get an opening question out of the way. And one that we sort of quickly chucked up before we got on was, Andy, what's the most constructive thing you did during the COVID lockdown?
So I actually bought a house during the COVID lockdown stuff.
Taking it very literally.
Yeah, so which was very interesting to sort of not have a real estate agent follow you around while you're in the house was great. So yeah, literally started knocking down walls and knocking out bits of the ceiling. And
Do you want to show everyone, or?
No, we'll leave it for now, but I'm pretty sure I put it on Instagram, so you can go and follow me on Instagram and see the progress shots.
Yep. Matt?
I don't know. How do you really top that? Just went and bought a house.
Yeah. Literally constructive.
My I guess accomplishments weren't anywhere near as great as that. But one thing I did notice was that because a lot of us were working from home, I saw a few of the little green lights appear on Facebook Messenger for people that I hadn't seen or spoken to in years, like some of the guys that I actually went to high school and uni with. So good to actually be able to, from working from home, chat with a few of them. And, now we've got a bit of a regular video games meetup happening online, which has been going on for the last couple of months. So it's been good.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, for personally myself, the trying to get some video content happening while we were all isolated was pretty much my main thing, obviously with a few full starts with regards to the live streaming that I attempted with the first Laurie interview, and then the aborted attempt with Michael Caine that sort of was really echoey, and it was, I got to apologise to Michael for what happened during that call, but finally decided that pre-recording via Zoom was probably the best option, and getting used to doing all this video editing and stuff behind the scenes and getting a decent quality video up. I'm still going to try doing the live streaming stuff because I'd like to try and get that happening. But this has probably been, it's been a work in progress, but we've got some really good numbers from the video AMAs, and really got to thank everybody for all their kind words and the players and coaches that agreed to appear with us. So hope everybody's enjoyed those.
Mate, I think you're setting yourself up for FFA TV when that becomes a thing.
Yeah, and there's no way they're going to have me on that.
I'm thinking that after weeks of having, some really good content and expert, now like everyone's going to settle for me and Andy, and probably wish that the season was delayed again.
No, absolutely not. They come on here for the dad jokes and the Simpsons references. We've never shied away from that. It's in our description. So yeah, don't be concerned. We're back to our regularly scheduled content, but the video AMAs will return after the season's finished. We've just got to see who else we can cajole to getting onto the jet stream with us. All right, so. Look, guys, the A-League season's back. We'll talk about it in general first, I suppose. Matt, it's been a long time coming. There was a few issues getting some teams out of Victoria when we won't really call it a second wave, but there's been a couple of hotspots cropping up. It took a while to get them out, and they're obviously in 2 weeks lockdown now, which has forced a rejigging of the restart. But it's just good to see football back on the screens, and with limited crowds as well. We thought. I was thinking that they were still going to be behind closed doors, but some people are actually being able to go and watch some live sport.
Yeah, I never thought I'd actually say it, but I enjoyed turning the football on last night and seeing Sydney on TV. Pity about the result, but it was still good to actually see, live football again.
What about for you, Andy?
So, yeah, the old slip of the page. Yeah, for me, I think personally, I sort of wanted the behind closed doors to continue because I think we were doing pretty well. And the Jets seem to do well when they're not playing in front of a crowd. Like all our preseason games, we seem to absolutely smash different teams, and then you bring the crowds into it, and seasons past it didn't really go too well. So, yeah, but it's great to have these games back on and that none of our players were really affected by it, and we can get on with the season.
Well, the counterpoint to that point, Matt, that Andy just brought up is whenever we had buys, a week off or international breaks, we were generally rubbish when we returned. So hopefully that stuff all balances itself out, and it's been that long since we actually played a game that it won't be classed as a break-in play. It'll just be classed as a new season with a new coach.
It's like some kind of super knockout tournament, isn't it? That we're playing just tacked on to the end. That it'll then have finals on the end of it as well. So, be interesting. It'll be interesting to sort of see, I guess, what the levels of fitness are. Especially, I know that there's been a few sort of trial games going on with some really mixed results. And there's been some really varied reports about how certain players have come back, fitness-wise, and how some other players have just decided not to come back.
We'll get to them.
Yeah, so I think you can almost throw form out the window anyway from the way things were rolling into the break. You're still going to have the different skill levels in different teams, but it will be an interesting couple of weeks anyway.
Yeah, definitely, Andy. And it's going to be like a mini FFA Cup tournament, if you want to, throw some sort of moniker over it. But the interesting thing has been watching, especially the Premier League, a lot of those games have been not quite up to the standard. They've been, I think that suffered. They've been playing all their games behind closed doors, and I think that product really struggles without the EPL atmosphere that most of those sort of teams are able to generate. So we're not going to have that much of an extreme, but it's going to be interesting to see what sort of form these teams come back in. Obviously, the Melbourne teams are going to be training while they're in lockdown. Some of the other teams have been training for a couple of weeks, but it's a shortage of games. Match fitness is the big issue, and they've got to basically hit the ground running, or otherwise they're going to be left behind. There's a lot of teams around that 4th to 8th position of the table that are really going to have to hit the ground hot to be able to force their way into finals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things with that, though, is worries me a bit if we're going to compare it to an FFA Cup, because we don't usually do too well in those either. But the other thing is, just picking up on what you said about the Premier League, we definitely had, from the games I've seen, it's been a lot slower. It hasn't been the high tempo. I'll give it to you, Liverpool-esque wins of championships and whatever else. But yeah, I think one of the best things for us is, even though Carl wasn't here because he'd returned home, you still had Deansy and Danny McBreen and whatever that were actually taking the players through. They seemed to get back on the park, maybe not earlier than other teams, but it was definitely one of the first teams I heard of that was actively back doing ball work training and not just fitness stuff. So hopefully that'll go well. The downside to it, I guess, is with the time we have left, we're going to end up not seeing that opportunity. Every game is worth, we need the points. So I don't think we're going to see some of the young players come through that we perhaps would see at the end of the season if, in Jets fashion, we're either chasing it or we're already out. But I'm going to be positive and say that we will do something with this, because we'll be that, cutthroat football where we just go out and play for the result, and it's week to week.
I think that sort of point, Andy, it's going to be interesting because they've changed the rules to allow for 5 subs now for the rest of these games. So, that point about young players, you're probably right in the sort of normal sense, but I can see the opportunity there for, a couple of the younger guys to get, 10 or 15 minute cameos, because you've got that opportunity to, really look at changing structure and, changing formation, really, I guess, affecting the tempo of the games that are in the last 15 or 20 minutes by having so many extra subs. So I think it'll be a good sort of learning opportunity as well for Carl to get a bit more of an understanding of how, some of the more fringe players might, perform, sort of given the opportunity, and maybe help him sort of make his decisions for who he's going to keep on next year. So it could be interesting.
Yeah, and I wonder if it'll even go the other way, whether we'll see some of the younger players with the additional subs. I actually forgot about that one, so good job, Matt. But I wonder if Carl would go with the start sort of those fringe players, and if we get ahead, great. If we need to hold a lead, you bring on your more sort of experienced ones that could see the game out. Just as an idea, I don't know, Carl Robinson has ways of doing things that no one ever would dream of.
Well, it's definitely going to be interesting, because we've got 4 games, we've got to win them. So I personally think he's going to go the way of selecting his most senior players, and then maybe bringing those fringe players on as subs and see whether they can affect the game in the limited amount of time they have. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. We're a club that haven't really been affected too much by losing a lot of our overseas players. Looking at the list I've written down, obviously Kane Shepherd chose not to return. Wes Houlihan chose not to return, but we are talking to him about next season. Bobby Burns returned because we couldn't get an extension on his loan deal from Hearts, and Glenn Moss retired. So, Matt, how much of an issue do you think losing those players is, or do you think we're well enough covered by the players we've been able to retain? Obviously, Joe Ledley's come back. We've still got Bernie Abini, and the 3 international coaches that we have as our coaching staff, Carl Robinson, Darren Paisley, and Kenny Miller, have all returned. So we haven't been as badly affected by COVID as some of the other teams in the A-League.
Yeah, well, I guess Houlihan is probably the biggest loss there, because I think we're just sort of starting to see what he could do, and he was starting to get a bit of fitness. You're right. When you've got Ledley and Abini both sort of coming in, that while they don't play exactly the same role, they're going to be sort of in that area of the field anyway. It doesn't seem to, I guess, weaken us that much, compared to losing, a Castro, for example. Yeah, I think it's, we've got the sort of coaching staff that we've got on deck now, they've all got their sort of different areas of expertise. So hopefully, from a tactical sort of perspective, they're right on top of it. I know that Carl didn't get back until week before last. Yeah. So yeah, he's had only a couple of sort of sessions with him, but you've just got to look at the opportunity here, I guess. If we miss out to Sydney, if we don't beat them, then unless everything possible goes our way, then we're going to miss the finals. You might as well sort of use the rest of the season to work on new combinations and sort of build for next year.
Andy, what do you think is the goal, or what is the minimum expectation? So do we have to win all 4 games, or do do you think we can? Because the only other team, well, the one team that hasn't really been affected by any of coronavirus departures has been Sydney FC. They're still pretty much, I think, the same team as what was there where before the pandemic hit. So do you think it's a simple matter of we've got to win all 4 games and that includes a game against Sydney, or do you think we'd still be able to sneak into the finals even if we lost against Sydney but won the other 3? What do you think the expectation's going to be from A, the fan base, and B, from Carl for the players?
I think from Carl, it's definitely going to be, he's very much a shoot for the moon, end up in the stars kind of coach from what I've gathered so far. But I think we need to be looking to get a result from every game. That may not necessarily always come in the form of a win, but definitely not drop too many points. And I only caught the last little bit of Sydney's game last night, and I'm sure Wellington were on their game as well, but they were late goals. It wasn't like the usual, Sydney commanding 3-0 lead within the first 10 minutes. And Bahaja, who scored the 2, I think, if that's correct, would probably do his ACL during the week or something like that anyway. So,
it'll be the week after he plays us.
Yeah, definitely. And apparently they benefit from a dodgy VAR call. How much? Talking of VAR as an aside, Matt, I know we're all very 50-50, or some of us weren't even 50-50 on it. But how much of we saw against Sydney last night against Wellington? It'll be Sunday by the time you hear this, so 2 nights ago for people watching this back. You saw what happens when VAR's not there. There is still the opportunity to get these things wrong. So how much of a factor do you think not having VAR there is going to be for these 27 and 28 days games?
Mate, to be honest, I'm glad that it's gone. I've always said that. Even though you might get the odd decision wrong, VAR sort of just showed that because everything was so open to interpretation, there were probably just as many that were contentious. So that's we've done without VAR up until a couple of years ago. I don't think it's made the game necessarily any better. If anything, it's ruined grand finals. So I'm glad that it's gone. See you later.
What about you, Andy?
Well, I was under the impression that no league could, by this point, you had to have it, that it was like a IFAB thing and you couldn't turn around and just say, oh, we don't want to have it.
Special exemptions after Corona because of the money that it keeps, money that it costs. So, different leagues don't necessarily have to have it.
Right, because I just straight away thought that you had to have it and we were kind of the first guinea pig. So it's interesting that we were first to sort of walk away from it. But I'm definitely in favour of not having it. There was, I think what we love the game for, we all, whinge and whatever else when it doesn't go our way. But there's been so many times where VAR has gone against us or just hasn't come in. So I think, we're going to probably do better without it.
The other thing we'll quickly talk on before getting to the game on Tuesday, Matt, is how the coronavirus has affected other teams. Obviously, well, that's a question. Who do you think's been the worst affected by departures and players not coming back? Melbourne's lost Toivonen. They've lost their temporary overseas coach. Adelaide's lost Verbeek, and they've got Carl Veart in the role. Queensland have lost Robbie Fowler, and the other bloke that was barring everybody arguing everybody on Twitter, it was Robbie Fowler that was blocking everybody on Twitter. And Diego Castro is currently roaming around the outback of WA in an RV. I don't know if he's following a caravan of grey nomads around or if he's cooking meth like Walter White. But who do you think's been worst affected by people not returning from from overseas or just deciding to leave because they didn't want to take a pay cut?
I think Kone going from Western United is going to be a big one. Mm. And apparently that was just because of the pay cut as well. Yep. Toivonen leaving Victory is obviously going to be huge, and Castro not being available for Perth with Economides out as well. all of a sudden he doesn't really have the selection problems that he did as far as fitting 5 or 6 quality front third players into 4 spots. So
Still got Fornaroli and Chianese, so they've got 2 players there, but there's not really much underneath. Andy, what about you? Who do you think's been worst affected by the coronavirus? I think Brisbane were at a point where they were just recovering and starting to put some good performance, well, good as Brexit football can be for Robbie Fowler together. But him leaving is leaving a pretty big hole in that in that club. So, who do you think's been worse affected by the coronavirus?
I think mentally it'd probably be the Melbourne teams. Like, that's got to be frustrating. The whole, phone call 30 minutes to get to the stadium, to get on a bus to go to the airport, to then turn around and do that again. And then I don't know the ins and outs of how charter flights work, but it was like, to me, why didn't you do it in the middle of the day when fog wouldn't be an issue? But yeah, so I think that would have played pretty heavily on them. And then with different players not going, not coming, all that sort of stuff. But I guess Perth Glory as well, because Western Australia was one of the ones that sort of went hard fast with lockdown stuff. So I don't know how much they got to actually do behind the scenes, but I guess Popovich would have had them on pretty good fitness routines. But yeah, football's a game with a ball at your feet. So you can be the fittest person in the world, but if you don't have the skills with the ball, you're probably not going to get too far.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think Melbourne's really going to struggle with the loss of Toivonen, but let's face it, this season they were struggling anyway. So I don't know too much how much of a change in fortune it's going to make them any worse or any better than they were before. So obviously they've got there was a former player's taken over as temporary coach for them. Not Broxham. Was it Broxham? No. Grant Brebner, that's it. I knew it was someone starting with B. It was just not the mental DJ. So they were the ones that were struggling anyway. But Melbourne City's coach, their international coach has stayed, Montbert, so he's still there. And I think they've only lost 1 player due to not coming back after the corona restrictions. So I think they're in pretty good shape. But I think Brisbane are obviously going to struggle, I think, when they were looking to turn things around before things hit. It's just, it's everyone's going to stray. It's just going to be very interesting over the next couple of weeks to see who comes out of this the best and who comes out of this the worst. Matt, so obviously we talked about Sydney FC versus Wellington, took place on Friday night, first game back. It was a 3-1 win to Sydney FC. Looking forward to how they performed in that game, to them being the first opponents for us. Was there anything you saw in that game that we'll be able to capitalise on, or we need to keep an eye out for?
I thought Wellington actually played really well against them and probably had the lion's share of possession. But as soon as Sydney scored, I knew that if that had been us, we'd have no way to get back in the game. Like as soon as when they brought Bahaja on, he's looking really dangerous now. He's I guess the extra time out and the extra training has really got him sort of timing his runs in behind the defence well. And when you got players like Ninkovic that could potentially, can feed in the ball. Those couple of one-on-one chances that he got in the last couple of minutes of the game last night, I'd hate to think what he'd do against, Topper and Boogs after, 75 or 80 minutes. So, yeah, I think that we're going to have to play this one, with the, front to goal and with a deep sort of line, because I don't think we can give Sydney the opportunity to try and get him behind us.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Andy? What did you see in that game that we've going to have to keep an eye on? Obviously, Bahaj is a player that they haven't been able to use because he's been injured for so long. This break in play has really helped them being able to bring him back. He's one of those players that they signed thinking he was going to be a game changer for them. Hasn't been seen very much because he's been injured, but we've been able to bring him back. And we saw in the first game what he can bring. So he's one player, but obviously we've got a bunch of other players in Sydney that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Players like Ninkovic and Brilliante controlling the middle of the park. What are you thinking that we're going to have to watch out for from Sydney on this game on Tuesday?
Well, I guess too, with as we said before, they were the team that pretty much kept all their players, and with Bahaja getting that time off to come back, they've almost as if they've signed another proven player. It'll again probably be similar to what he's done in the last couple of years, where he's had a solid preseason and then got a horrendous injury a week or two into the season and is out for the rest of it. But we're also, Lafondre scored last night, I believe, and he's now, if not on par or taken over McLaren for Golden Boot and all that sort of stuff. And we're playing in that sort of colder weather at the moment. So he made a point last night that it was wet, it was rainy, it was miserable, and it was exactly what he's used to. And I think that's one of the things that's exciting about the league, that we're, going to be changing to that later in the year, where we'll go a bit more into those cooler months and be able to see that more high tempo play, hopefully. So that's one of the good things. And I guess also too, for them to keep that squad together must just go a long way to show what the club has done behind the scenes, that none of the players had really gotten too upset and wanted to go home and all that sort of stuff. And, we're very similar with us. As Laurie said, Wes only went home because of his wife being pregnant and whatever else. So, mind you, I probably wouldn't race back to the UK right now. But, so yeah, I guess we have an opportunity to restart everything. And I genuinely think the rest of this season is going to come down to who can manage the workload and who can manage the game on the day.
Matt, that's a good point Andy brought up earlier that we haven't really had a chance to discuss. I've talked about it with some of the other Video AMA guests. But what are your thoughts on the move for the season changing from December to July? Are you seeing, like a lot of people are, positives and negatives for playing? We start off in the middle of summer, but we end up in the middle of winter. We're also going to be overlapping a lot more with NRL and AFL. So what are your thoughts on the rejig season? And do you think it's something that's going to be long-term, or do you think it's something that they're going to revisit and maybe look to change again once the following season's finished?
I think that it'll be steady as she goes for the next couple of years. They'll wait and sort of see what's happening worldwide and what happens, I guess, with the state of the grounds after all the competitions sort of come together. That's probably my biggest concern. I know that, I guess, there's the commercial concern that we're going to be fighting with the other codes as well. But the majority of people that I sort of speak to that go to the Jets don't go to the Knights anyway. So, I don't think that it's going to affect maybe the home attendance that much. I think it'll more be the TV viewership, because I know a lot of people that watch the Jets also watch the Knights, and if they were both sort of playing about the same time, then a lot of them probably would tune into the NRL over the A-League. So it'd be interesting to sort of see, I guess, how that sort of affects the commercial viability of the game. The rest of it, I guess, is still all up in the air, as whether we sort of stay in line with Asia and with the sort of NPL clubs and whatnot, or they make the financial decision to switch back. So it's probably really going to come down to, those numbers. Mute.
I'm muted. There we go. I'm unmuted. It pops up a little reminder for me. That's fantastic. Thanks, Zoom. Andy, it shows a big shift in focus from the FFA that a lot of the focus for over the last 10 years has been trying to attract the casual fan to come to A-League and try and grow the brand that way. But a lot of people would argue it's to the detriment of alienating the core football fans that were what made football that to begin with. It's alienated a lot of the active support. It's alienated a lot of the people that basically felt like they were pushed aside to try and get this whole family-friendly crowd in to come and watch the A-League. So are you happier with the way that the FFA's focus seems to have shifted to getting back to its roots and focusing more on the football crowd and the people that love football to begin with, and then get those other casual people to come and join the A-League by osmosis rather than specifically catering for them?
Yeah, and I think the Jets are one of the best examples for the casual fan. You look at when we hosted the Grand, and everyone sort of got on the bandwagon for that, and then we saw a bit of spike in crowds, but that was about it afterwards. Which granted could be, the length between the grand final and the season restarting. It's not that sort of hype of we've had a grand final, we've moved into the next season. But I think for now, it's the best decision to, get back in and do the season as soon as they can for the next season and roll it in. And if it overlaps, it overlaps. The biggest thing will be the broadcast deal that they do ongoing, because I think one of the things that allows in the past for the A-League to command the money that they have from Fox is because outside of cricket, it's the only content in summer. And Fox Sports really put the whole summer of football and all that sort of stuff around that. So that'll be the interesting factor, but I think it'll definitely come down to, the positioning and what happens with rolling into the Women's World Cup. And, I don't know if I necessarily agree with the mindset that people will go from kids soccer in the morning to, moving your all age to what it'd have to be like a midday 2:00 kickoff in order to get to the stadium for a 5:30 Saturday afternoon game. I just don't see that happening in the landscape of how grassroots works. But I'd like to be wrong.
What could possibly happen, and depending on who controls the broadcast rights and whether, the FFA have got a bigger sort of share in it, maybe they, with streaming and whatnot. I think it would be good to see like a broadcaster not have so much influence on, the kickoff times, and whether that means that, like you might have 2 or 3 games running at once, and, if that means that the FFA can, sell the right, or you can just purchase the rights to watch one of those particular games. Like, it means we don't have to have those stupid, 3:00, 5:00, 7:00 kickoffs. We could potentially have 2 or 3 games all kicking off at 7:00 or 7:30 at night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, did Foxtel get rid of the whole like press whatever colour button and you could then choose between, like they did it when they had the Premier League rights, you could pick between 5 different games what one you wanted to watch because they all had simultaneous kickoffs?
Yeah,
choice.
They did have it, but I think, I'm not sure, but you could only watch those games on the red button in like standard definition. You couldn't get them in HD. So I don't know whether they went away from it because they had so many more HD channels they could cover the games anyway. Because I think they just used to shove them on Fox Sports News, the HD channel, if they had more than one game at a time. But it's definitely going to be interesting. But the big benefit, I think, to the change in the broadcast deal has been the mooted possible move to an FFA TV service, which will be great if we can try and bring all the football under one streaming deal. You can get people to subscribe to it, but the big thing is going to be all the historical matches we haven't traditionally had access to. I've been looking around for all over the place to try and find full versions of matches we played in the past that we wanted to watch again, because one of the ideas we had during lockdown was to replay one of these games and actually sit there, watch it live and commentate on it. But it's just, you can't find any of these games. There's no way to get and especially Jets games, unless you've actually previously recorded them. I've got some in my garage that I couldn't even, I had to literally try and go through them and see what games I've recorded. There's probably only 5 games I probably want to watch, but it's an option that hasn't really been available to us before now. And being able to put NPL and lower league games under a streaming banner, so that even if it's not being covered live, it's been recorded, then uploaded, people can watch it back. You have that service for $10, $15 a month. You have 100,000 people subscribing to it. That's $1 million a month you could get from people just wanting to watch football. And there's a little bit more of a regular income stream that's going to offset some of the loss from a change in the broadcast deal. You still get live A-League games and Socceroos games on terrestrial or free to air or streaming. It's still going to be available, but it's giving us more options, I think. Matt, I'm hoping that the FFA TV thing comes off, but it's definitely going to be interesting over the next 12 to 18 months to see whether Foxtel's wanting to keep the A-League as part of their banner or whether they're completely wanting to get away from football. And you can just tell by the commentators and stuff that they've had and the people that they've lost over the last 12 months, it doesn't really bode well for Foxtel keeping football on their platform.
Look, I don't know all the numbers, but from what I've heard, they're pretty much bleeding money, so they can't continue to do what they're doing, like pump so much money into sports in this game, and I guess have such huge production costs and whatnot behind it, because what they do produce is pretty good, sort of pretty high quality. Who knows? I think it's probably a different podcast to get into the discussion of the future production methods and values and quality of the league in general. I just hope that we can keep watching it.
Yeah, definitely. Andy, we'll get into the game Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Playing Sydney FC away at Netstrata Jubilee Oval, I think it is, down in Kogarah. Obviously, we saw Sydney FC play. They won 3-1 against Wellington, who were much higher on the table. But how much of what you saw in that game do you think is going to affect how we prepare for the game on Tuesday night?
I granted only caught the last 15 minutes of it, but one thing that I think will be paramount in this game will be actually making sure that if we start well, we maintain it and we actually try and put in, because I don't think any team in the league at the moment is up to 90-minute performances. So it'll just be about who can manage it best, who can, if you go ahead, how do you best manage the game out to see the game out? Otherwise, do you chase the game in the last 15 minutes, bringing on, your Energizer bunnies that can just run and get in behind? So it'll be very interesting for the technical minds like Carl to work out how he's going to manage it.
Matt, is this the game that if Sydney win, they confirm the Premier's plate, or do they still have to win another one?
Looking at the ladder, I think this has actually confirmed it. So they're 15 ahead of Wellington and 11 ahead of City. So, it'll be next week. As long as they get a point, they need 1 point from the result for us.
Right. So they need 1 point, and that's the thing. They're pushing. Is this game is this a game too early for us to hope for a win? Do you think? Personally, I'd probably be happy with the draw. If Sydney, all Sydney need is going to be a draw, then maybe they might be happy with the draw. We all walk away, shake hands. That helps our final push. That gets them the Premier's plate. How much of a scenario do you think that is?
I don't think either team will play for the draw. I think we definitely settle for it. I'm pretty sure Sydney will want to take out the plate with the win. So, they've got one game under their belt. That's maybe a plus. Minus might be the sort of short turnaround time that they've got. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. They seem to have a bit of form during these warm-ups that we'd had. Wellington seemed to be pretty good during the warm-ups. I think we only had one draw from memory against Western Sydney. So in different form, certainly haven't been banging the goals in. So I was listening to this. I think it was an interview that Carl did, or maybe Laurie did, about how they were sort of experimenting with Bernie playing in the number 10 role. And apparently, Fitzy's been looking really good. Stevie Uji's been looking really good. So, who knows? It's like the start of a new season, fans.
Yeah, and Andy, Matt brings up a good point. It's a very short turnaround for Sydney. They have 4 days, and this is our first game back. So that could play into our hands, especially with Carl coming back, and he's definitely shown a turnaround since he's come in. that could play in our favour on Tuesday night with the short turnaround. Sydney might not be as sharp on it, or the alternative view is because they can just get some momentum going and continue to steamroll. How do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I actually am leaning towards the way that it will just start a bit of a steamroll. I think we'll get a result out of this game, and I would classify a result as a draw or better. But one of the things that I think is of importance to them is the fact that they haven't travelled. They've got some of, if not the best, fitness coaches and whatever else in the league. So they would be managing all your soft tissues and all that sort of stuff probably better than any of the other teams in the league. So, yeah, for them to not travel I don't think the turnaround is really going to come into it, and they're almost would still be, in my opinion, looking at these games as a trial that means something. And I don't think you can take away from Sydney. Like, once again, they've had an amazing season and, in my opinion, deserve the plate. But I think this season is always going to have that little asterisk next to it that says, yep, they were first past the post, but beyond there doesn't really matter because of the way it's restarted. So we'll probably win the championship and no one will claim it because it's COVID season.
Matt, looking at starting 11, obviously we talked about the 4 players that are no longer with us. I think the biggest miss out of that is going to be Bobby Burns, purely because when we were trying to play Johnny Katrumbis in that role, it didn't work. So what do you think is going to be the solution in that role, playing a fullback? Are we going to see Hoffy being played in that fullback position? Do we continue with the back 3 and look to bring in some wide players to cover that position instead? What do you think is going to be the way we're going to not have to be too concerned about the loss of Bobby Burns?
I think we'll probably stay with the back 3. I think that's sort of how we ended up towards the pre-COVID break. And I think that's what, from memory, I remember Carl sort of touching on as well in one of his interviews. So, probably Katrumbis, Boogs and Topper Stanley, but playing sort of as 3 centre backs.
Yep, or Lockie Jackson. Well, we'll get into
Jackson's
it now.
Injured, isn't he?
I think he's recovered. I'm pretty sure when I asked Laurie in last week's AMA, he pretty much, from what I remember, I think he said the only sort of player that wouldn't be available for selection was Cantor because he's re-injured his knee again. So, yeah. Sorry, Andy?
Standard. Cantor's hurt his knee.
Poor bastard. He just can't catch a break. But, I would say that it will probably be Katrumbis, Bugard and Topo Stanley. Well, who do you think are going to be the other players who are going to be pushing for selection? Obviously, we're all pretty much locked in that it'll be Ugarkovic and Joe Ledley as the players in the middle. But how are we going to fill those other positions? Does Bernie get a start? Roy's obviously going to be playing. Dimmy, how are we going to line up, Andy?
I wouldn't be surprised if everyone's fit, which it sounds like they pretty well are, that you'd see the starting lineup that we went with against Melbourne City. Give Connor O'Toole a start on the left with the back 3 you just mentioned, Miller on the right, Katrumbis and Ledley in the middle. And if Fitzgerald's on, which he seemed to be, like, he almost was up there with a new player in that game. He played really well. And then Roy seems to be pretty keen at it. And if you've got the subs to then sort of bring on your Angus Thurgates, Bernie, Arroyo, like, that's a pretty tasty trio to bring on late in the game.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, Arroyo's a player another one that I'd forgotten was still here, but he's a player that's hanging around for the remainder of this season, and a player we didn't have, I'm pretty sure, at that stage. I think he was still struggling with fitness or recovering from an injury. So we do have we are going to be able to use we are going to be able to use those substitution spots effectively, I think, with the players that we got.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, the part that I like about having the additional subs available. It just, I guess, means that we can have a plan A and actually have have enough sort of players available to enact a plan B if it's not working. So I guess it brings the coaches into the game a little bit more as well. I'm hoping that everyone's fit. I think that everyone's going to be still missing a little bit of match sharpness though. So whether it is Ledley that gets to go gets the start because he's had that hotel quarantine and everything that he's had to go through as well. Who knows? But it'll be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just trying to pull up the starting 11 and subs for the Melbourne City game. So I'm just navigating to that now. Sorry, this is a bit of live. Here we go. Yep. Okay. So Taliano, Miller, O'Toole, Topor, Stanley, Bugard, Kotrumbis, Fitzgerald, Ugarkovic, Ledley, Petrados, Roy. Glenn Moss obviously came on, and Wes Houlihan came on. They're not available. Bernie Abini came on. We had Mackie, Petrados, Arroyo, Thurgate. So obviously we had some players there that we're not going to see this time. But I think that's actually not a bad shout. I'd probably think that. Yeah, I'd say you're probably right. We'll go pretty close to what we saw, I think, in the City game. It's just going to be interesting to see whether O'Toole plays or whether he tries somebody else. Actually, that was another player that was missing, I think, in the City game was Hoffy wasn't even on the bench. I think he was still injured at that point in time as well. So that's another player that's going to come back in contention. I do apologise. We're not really going to be able to go into absolutely heaps of detail about this game because it's been so long since we've seen them play and we haven't been at training for obvious reasons for the last couple of weeks. So there's probably not a great deal else we can talk about, Matt, with regards to this game, but maybe give a score. What do you reckon is going to be the score at full time?
Jesus. Let's go for a 1-1 draw.
I'm thinking the same thing. Andy?
Yeah, no, I'm going to be positive. It'll be a 3-2 victory to us.
Yeah, I'll be happy with that. Now, we've talked about the Sydney FC versus Wellington Victory game that ended 3-1 on Thursday night. Friday night. Saturday tonight, as we're recording this, saw Perth Glory win 1-0 over Central Coast Mariners. And Andy, did that pretty much confirm that Central Coast would get the spoon this season?
I would imagine so. And yeah, I guess, well, yeah, they're 13 points and Victory's ahead of them on 20. So I don't think that's mathematically possible, but math isn't really my strong point. So let me know on Twitter when I'm wrong.
Yep, no, that's all right. Let us know on Twitter if you. Well, it's pretty much going to be another wooden spoon season for the Mariners. But we'll look ahead to the games that are going to take place after. You'll be seeing these. You'll be seeing these from tomorrow when this video goes up. So scrolling down, Sunday 7:30 p.m. kickoff sees Brisbane Roar hosting Adelaide United. Two of those teams that are missing a bunch of players due to various people departing and coaches departing and everything else. Matt, what do you reckon's the score going to be? Cal Viet taking over after, we said, Gertjan Verbeek leaves. And Robbie Fowler has also left Queensland. So it's pretty much a coin toss as to who's going to win this.
I think I'm just going to have to pick the score based on what I want to happen from a Jets perspective. So you've got to go for the win for Brisbane. A 2-0 win would certainly help us along.
Would it?
Yeah, we're not gonna overtake Brisbane, but Adelaide's one of the teams we could possibly jump ahead of.
Yeah, that's true. There's 3 points difference between us. Yeah, so Adelaide are on 27, Brisbane are on 35. So yeah, you're right.
If we can, if Western United, Western Sydney, and Adelaide all have shockers for the next, couple of weeks, then we're in with a chance.
Which is entirely possible. I'll go with a 1-0 Brexit football win to Brisbane as well. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, I was just having a look at this one, and it has I sort of go off where the betting's at, and it has Brisbane at favourites for a over under and whatever. So I actually think Brisbane will get a 2-0 victory.
Okay. We've talked over what's going to happen on Tuesday with Sydney FC versus the Jets. So there's a break between Sunday and Monday. Wednesday, we probably won't record until Wednesday night or Thursday. We're not too sure when we're going to be able to preview the F3 Derby that takes place on Friday the 24th. So we'll quickly cover off Wednesday, the 22nd of July, 7:30 p.m. sees Perth Glory taking on Wellington Phoenix. I will go for a 2-1 win for Wellington. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, I think Wellington looked very good last night, and if Perth are only holding the Mariners to a 1-0 victory, then Wellington has lots of room to do things.
And missing a bunch of players. Matt, what about you?
I reckon, Wellington will get back up. I think that loss to Sydney would have stung them a bit, but I think they'll be a lot too much, a lot stronger than what, Popovich and his three sons will be.
Yep. Yeah, so as the Destruction in the Box podcast is quite fond of referencing a Popovich of players at Perth Glory. It's, quite funny. He's got his entire family.
Deja vu, isn't it? Like a bit of nepotism coming out of Perth Glory.
Oh, that never happens. It never happens in football at all. All right. Well, there's probably not a great deal else we can talk about unless there's any news. Actually, we didn't talk about. I didn't talk about with you guys the signing of James Donaghy, a 3-season deal that was announced a couple of weeks ago. Andy, what were your thoughts on signing the Melbourne Victory defender?
Yeah, it probably wasn't one I was expecting. But I think one comment I was going to make when we were going through sort of who could come in and all that sort of stuff was it's exciting to have a squad that actually has a bit of depth to it, that we're not sitting there going, oh, if such and such gets hurt, we're screwed, season over kind of deal. But yeah, Donaghy on a 3-year deal. I don't think there's too much risk in that. From memory, he's not a player that gets hurt too often, and is kind of one of those players that, apart from a few little niggles and whatever else, you don't hear too much about. So he'll be good to go, I hope.
He's really, really sneaky. Like he manages to sneak into offside positions, and not even the cameras pick him up until it's too late.
Yeah, exactly. It's he's definitely owes us a lot of payback for that. And yeah, well, we'll definitely been reminding him once we're back in the stadium and we're allowed to watch Jets games again. All right, so we will be back probably Wednesday or Thursday to talk about the F3 Derby that takes place next Friday from Central Coast Stadium. So look for us towards the end of the week. We will be posted up. We'll most likely be doing both video and audio again for this one, and we'll see how they go. So give us some feedback. Podcast at newcastlefootball.net, at Jetstream Newy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, whether you want just the audio with the podcast or whether you're happy with the video as well. And give us a yell and let us know what you thought about the video AMA segments that we did while everything was shut down, and whether there were any other guests or any other special features or stuff that you would like us to do between the end of this current league that finishes in August, I think, and then the restart in December. Yeah, that's pretty much all we can really talk about now, I think, except to thank Matt for joining me tonight. Thanks for a bit of a delayed start. We were having I was having some computer issues before we got going, and
you were curling your mustache.
I was. Yes, it was. It's a long process. It takes some time, but thanks for hanging out and jumping on, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thanks to you, Andy, as well, for your patience as well while I got all this crap sorted.
No worries. I'm still convinced it was you that was wrong because Matt and I both said 8 o'clock and you swear it was 7.
I thought it was 7, but hey, it turned out it's 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock worked out better anyway. So yeah.
I mean, how dare you make me wait?
But it enabled me to polish off an extra beer while I was waiting for my computer to fix itself. So yeah, awesome. All right, thanks very much for watching and listening, guys. Let us know what you think, and in the meantime, vamos el coronavirus.
Yep.
Good luck with that.
Go the Jets.
Go
Go
the
the-
Hey, Ferns.
Yeah.
See how we were in Jets jerseys for this pod?
Yep.
I reckon for next pod, we should all wear
Little-
our favourite at least 2-time Premier League winning teams.
I think just one Premier League winning team would be great. There was 18 other victories between that and now. Yeah. Yeah.